Hello and welcome to another episode of the Choose Strong podcast. I am Sally MCRAE and I'm joined by Eddie MCRAE. Yeah, I said your name first this time.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I don't even feel like that we need to say this is another episode of the Choose Strong podcast. Like, if you pressed play on accident, maybe that was your first discovery when I said this is the Choose Strong podcast. But I think for now, our listeners know it's going to be us doing the intro. So why don't we just give a warm welcome to everyone listening, Ed?
Yes, welcome. It's good to have you listening and putting us in your ears.
In our ears, in the speakers.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I'm literally picturing someone that is like right now, only like 400 meters into their run. And they're just like grinning right now. They're so happy that we have joined them for their run. And I'm thinking in my mind, because I'm in my off season right now where I do much less running. I'm thinking of me just like on a bike next to you, our listener. I'm on a bike next to you and we're just like going to have a good conversation today.
No, if you're on a bike next to them, you're screaming at them. Let's be honest. You're not singing encouraging.
Drop the hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
Drop the hammer. No, this is a friendly long run. Long runs are my favorite because I've had some of the best conversations of my life in long runs. But you know what? You and I just did the drive from Salt Lake City to Moab, and that was like a solid 3-4 hour drive. How long was that? 4 hour drive. You and I, we were singing. We were chatting. I mean, that's also a good time to listen to a podcast. We have people that are on their way to work or they're home from work or on their way home from work that like to tune in for that. I love that people tell us when they listen to this podcast because I picture it. But Eddie, we've had some super sweet reviews come in.
That's funny because I was literally pulling up the one.
That you sent me yesterday?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it like made me want to cry. It was, and I feel like we've been getting this often in our email. People have been telling us that they feel like they are our friends.
Yeah.
So I have to say, listeners, you are literally our friends. Like when we meet you at events, races, at the airport, grocery store, coffee shop. I mean, we've met people everywhere we go and you tell us you listen to our podcast. Like we just get so giddy. Like we get so excited. We're like, oh my gosh, we get to put a face to a listener. And that really is what we wanted when we were creating this podcast. We wanted to create a community that people feel like they just have this big giant mass of friends and Eddie and Sally are their besties rooting for them in life and everything that they do. And I think we all want that. We want to be a part of something. We want to know that people believe in us and see us. And so a lot of what we discuss in the podcast is as a result of the questions we get, the stories that people share with us, and the interactions that we have with you, our listeners. So from the bottom of our hearts, like we genuinely love you so much. And we talk about you often because our podcast is a weekly podcast. Eddie and I are sharing these messages and the comments and the DMs with each other, and they're making us laugh and they're making us just like, I don't know. We feel like our work is just so meaningful because of our listeners. So if you are a brand new listener, just welcome. We got big, wide open arms now, pulling you in. So
pulling you in. I forgot. Wait, I might have told you. I met a guy named Rob. He was at Moab. I forget what aid station it was, but he's a fellow Canadian, and he had a very nice Canadian accent I was jealous of, but he was saying how he listens to the podcast, and he actually had a bummer of a story, but he was set to race at Moab, but he got sick in September, like pretty bad. And then he like for a couple of weeks where he just couldn't pull it off to get to the start line, but he ended up still driving down because he had those days off to go and volunteer and hang out.
What a rock star.
Yeah. But he was saying how he loves me on the podcast. So, yeah. So
okay.
I think.
So we want to take a moment to highlight that
me.
He loves you.
Yeah. That's why I brought that up.
You.
It's my boy Rob. My boy Rob.
That's not the only one. There is like your audience is the Eddie fans now. I feel like I need to make an Eddie fan t-shirt.
No, he did say that he loves listening to you, but
he does. But people are starting to nudge me and say that Eddie needs to be on every episode.
And we already talked. This is not happening. All right. So let me read. This is the most recent review actually from the Apple podcast review. The title of it says, "The World Needs Sally and Eddie." Okay. 5 stars. This is by RDS2117. Do you know who that is?
I don't. I usually don't.
You don't know code?
Know people by code.
I think that's a Star Wars character. All right. This is the only podcast on my feed that I check back for new episodes all the time. Why does it feel like Sally and Eddie are my new besties? It's because of their infectious love for people, the sport, and life. The world needs content like this. I really don't like it when podcasts are more than an hour, but I could listen to the Choose Strong podcast for hours. It's like getting together with friends and not realizing how much time has passed since you sat down to chat.
That made my day.
Wasn't
so
that
you
cool?
screenshotted that and you texted it to me when I was coming home from the gym last night.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So thank you so much for taking the time to send the just the sweet words. And there's so many. I mean, we get messages every single day. So Eddie is always reading me emails, and he runs the Choose Strong podcast Instagram and gets a lot of stuff there too. So
yeah, thank you, RDS2117. Speaking of the Instagram, yesterday I put out who won the hats.
Oh man!
And I had some sad people responding to
it's
that
really
post.
hard only doing 10, but we're going to do 10 more. So we have another giveaway that we're going to do in November, but we have some good news, Ed, about the hat.
What's the news? Do I know?
Well, we're meeting with Nike tomorrow.
Oh, yes, that is good news.
We are meeting with Nike tomorrow to talk about getting a shipment that will go on our site.
Getting those hats to the world.
And getting the hats to the world. So for the literally thousands of people who are trying to get this hat, yes, it will be for sale, and it will be in several different colors.
Yeah.
So yellow is the best, but
yellow stands out.
Not everyone likes yellow. So I love the idea of a black one with yellow writing.
That'd be cool.
Which is legit. And then we have one more color that we're kind of playing around with. But our aim is to get this out for the holidays. We will find that out tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if you did not win a hat, we're sad that you didn't. We wish that we had just so many in stock right now, but we are very grateful for everyone attempting and trying to get the hat. You were commenting and tagging your friends. So thank you for doing that. And we will be doing another giveaway, and we will keep you updated as to when those are going to go on sale. So it should be soon.
Yeah. Yep. So we just got back from the gym. How was that's your second time lifting weights since Moab. How you feeling?
Yeah, this week I was super excited to make it to this week. It was the beginning of this week was, okay, the fog has lifted from my brain, which I am my equilibrium is off, and I'm just a little bit in a state of delirium. I feel like I'm just my whole system's trying to catch up and heal. And
which makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And Moab, I think, was obviously I pushed the hardest out of all the races. Dealing with, if I had to put every obstacle of all the races into one race, that was Moab.
Yeah.
So there wasn't anything that was smooth about the race. Mm-hmm. And I think, we talked about that in the last episode. I was able to utilize the 3 previous races in order to win.
Yeah.
Knowing what I could endure and how to handle some of those setbacks at Moab allowed me to keep pushing. So, but because of that, when you give your best and you give all of yourself and you cross that finish line pretty wrecked, there's a recovery that needs to be respected. And so no running, no activity. I think the most that we did was just walking. I walked every day. Well, not the first 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
My feet I could barely even stand in sliders. Yeah. But I'm able to put shoes on now. and no running yet. I'll probably hold off for running for like another week. So yeah, taking a full like few weeks off from running. And yeah, this week marked the beginning of like my off-season training. So that's something that we just made a reel today about it, letting people know that we're going to be doing a YouTube series about my off-season, because it's maybe not what people expect when they think of an off-season, but I believe taking an off-season seriously and really giving it the attention that it deserves.
What if it's like all just you just like at restaurants, like the whole time, just like 20 minutes in an episode of you just eating?
So now I'm at donut shop number 18.
Like
and you just like see me getting bigger and bigger as the episodes go on. I stack on like legit 50 pounds. I'm just eating every day.
Like at first,
like
everybody's like stoked to watch it. And then like by the 5th or 6th episode, they're like comments to like, "Hey, Sally, you okay?"
Like I'm completely unhealthy, just like hardcore partying like every night. I'm like, I love my off season. Yes.
Off season rules. I want to get into an off season, man. Just for that.
And everyone's like, wow, that's the secret. Sign me up. Sign me up.
Check out this lady. She won Moab 240. Like looking at it. Like, really? She did? Are you sure? Oh, I'm sorry. I just had that thought come in my mind.
Leave it to Eddie to just completely take us off track. And there goes his childish imagination. Yes.
You'd be surprised all the things that I sit over here thinking about while you're talking.
No, I know, because I can see it on your face. Like every single time, like all of a sudden you have like this mischievous smile. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I let you run with it sometimes. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, interrupt me. Go for it, babe.
All right, go ahead.
It's good. It's good. No, but we're going to be doing a YouTube series on the off season. I really believe it's kind of an underrated thing. And when people think of off season, there's two things that people think about. One, which is similar to what you're thinking. It's like me just laying on the couch with bonbons.
Yeah.
Like, do bonbons even exist anymore?
So. Nobody eats those anymore.
That's like from the 80s,
yeah.
Like those chocolate covered ice cream bites.
Nobody eats those.
Nobody eats bonbons. Anyway, it's that. It's just doing absolutely nothing. I think people think of that as the off season. What? There you go again.
I just have this picture in my mind of what that looks like.
Of me laying on the couch?
Yeah.
And?
No, it's nothing.
Run with it. Go ahead.
No. I'm not saying anything more.
Anyway, there's that. And then there's just this off season. I think that people understand that they know is necessary, but they don't know how to structure. Like what makes sense for an effective off season. And one of the biggest focuses for me is letting my mind rest. I take a break from the mental intensity because I can be a pretty intense person. You know, I don't know if you agree with that, Ed.
I definitely agree with that.
But yeah, I can be pretty intense. And I think giving the mind a break from structured training is vital.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely what gets me excited when the season starts, and what allows me to push so hard when I'm in season is because I have had this very concentrated rest and a break and have allowed myself to recover. And I think that's just how we are as humans. There's a time to rev the engine, and there's a time where you need to rest and recover and have a reset. So I'm really excited about this YouTube series because we're going to be answering a lot of the listeners' questions. So that reel that I just posted today, I actually asked for questions, and immediately we got dozens of questions within the first few minutes. So I'm really excited to answer those and share with people the importance of off season, ideas on how you can craft your off season, and then, just overall the importance and how it's played a part in allowing me to do what I do every year.
Nice.
So yeah, today I didn't mean to be on the bike for 10 miles, but our family is going to Nashville, Tennessee together. I'm super excited that we are all going together. I'm heading out to do a show with Nick Bear. They are now in Tennessee. They're not in Austin, Texas anymore. And he was so kind as to ask, like, is the whole family want to come out? And I'm like, heck yeah. Like, that's one of my greatest joys, is being able to bring the whole family with me when I travel and just sharing the joy of discovering new places. So I've been to Nashville a few times. Love Nashville, Music City, man. Like, and our whole family loves music. So I think that this will be a fun little mid-school year trip. It's the fall season too, so it's gonna be really beautiful out there. But yeah, so I spent like 45 minutes of my bike ride booking plane tickets. So, and I'm sorry, but holiday plane tickets, the prices right now are not cheap. Like, it was crazy. So
should have booked Spirit.
I know. And Nick was like, you book the tickets in the hotel and we'll just reimburse you. And I'm like, oh man, like I tried so hard to find like cheaper flights. And I was like, dude, everything is like, yeah, the holidays have begun apparently. And, yeah, maybe it would have been cheaper to drive, but we don't have that time.
Yeah. Actually, I think the last time I was there. We drove through it, right?
We drove through it, and Mackenzie was like literally 3 months old. Yeah. We were moving back from Washington, D.C., and we hit several states on the way back to California. So yes, Eddie and I lived in Washington, D.C. for a few years, just up and left and took a chance. And we had Mackenzie out there. So she's a little Virginia girl.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we will be heading to Tennessee next week, and that'll probably pretty much be as far as I know so far. Fingers crossed. My last trip of the whole of the year. So. I know. Yeah. So we did 10 miles on the bike, and then an hour of lifting, and it was like, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was super fun. Nothing structured. It was just kind of whatever I wanted to do and whatever felt good. So
yeah.
And then you showed up halfway through, and like a creeper would go around and video me, but not always like
no
next
shame
to
in
me.
my game.
He'd sometimes be like 20 feet away filming me, and I would just laugh so hard because I'm like, what are the other guys thinking right now in the weight room? Seeing this dude like hold up a camera as I go by, as I'm walking. I was doing lunge walks. And Eddie's just sitting on his bench press bench, and he's just like filming me, and I'm giggling. Like,
I definitely look shady.
You look shady.
I did, yeah.
You just do anyway.
Wait, what?
What?
No, I don't.
All right. I think some of the listeners actually pushed play on this episode because of the title, and we haven't even got there yet.
So let's break it down, and let's talk a little bit more about a serious topic.
Yeah, it is a serious topic. I mean, I think it's probably one of top two, especially recently in the past, since releasing my book and then doing this Grand Slam series. Yeah.
So pain is the topic that you're going to speak on a little bit today. And obviously pain is associated with you, especially quite a bit lately, just since the release of your book. Knowing the background and your childhood and obviously the things that you did this year to push through pain and, complete these 200s that you set out to complete. And you get a lot of messages about that subject, right? So let's maybe just talk a little bit about I guess just this past season of racing. And I know that you are fresh off the last one, but you might not have had a ton of time, but have you been able to reflect at all on everything that you've endured in terms of pain this past year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe that taking time to reflect and remember is a really powerful activity. That's something that I do a lot just when I run. People ask, like, do you run with music? I do when I'm doing workouts along the coastline, but when I'm in the mountains, no. And one of my favorite things to do is just reflect and pray and think about where I've come from and where I'm going. And I think just that activity is a powerful tool that we can all use in our life because we live in a loud world.
Yeah.
And if we don't have time to harness what's going on between our two ears, just in our everyday life, it does make it difficult to do that when you're in the midst of a season in your real life that is difficult or painful. And I think about in a race too, the time that I spend in prayer and just, thinking in training allows me to work through some of those situations before I reach them in races. And I shared a little bit about this even in different parts of my book when I talked about winning Badwater, because the win to Badwater was pretty difficult. I had really unfortunate, horrible diarrhea, like the whole entire race. But like I had committed myself to that training. I had studied. And one of the things that I did before race day for weeks and weeks was I would mentally prepare and go through every setback that could potentially happen in that race. And I would work through all the steps that I would take in order to fix it, resolve it, and keep moving forward in it. And I knew that by doing that, I wasn't looking for the negative. I wasn't like, oh, it's going to be a terrible race, which I think that's a part of our brain that's so powerful. If you're expecting everything to be terrible, if you're expecting like, well, this is my life and stuff never turns out and, I never make it, I never complete it, or just bad stuff happens to me, it's easy to stay in that state of mind. And in fact, your brain just starts to look for that stuff. But you can prepare to be strong against things or to endure things that are uncomfortable, but still keep hope and a positive mindset at the forefront. And I think that that's what I did with Badwater. Everyone suffers out there. I mean, it's an incredibly uncomfortable race. Like no matter what, even if you have no like physical ailments, like everyone to some degree is going to suffer from the heat. Just physically and just scientifically, it's almost impossible to avoid, that breakdown that comes with the heat. And so I knew that the power of my mind was going to help me get through some really tough situations. So when they did arise, I wasn't so taken aback by it. I wasn't overcome by it. It was like, yeah, guess what, brain? I already have a resolution for this. I already know what to do. And I'm not going to let you be bigger than my goal. Yeah, a lot of that powerful self-talk and belief, really harnessing that strength that I believe that we all have. I love that. I actually talked about this on another podcast, how I think that we are all born with strength. And sometimes we get the gift of having parents that remind us of that as we grow and teach us how to harness that. They teach us how to have confidence and to believe in ourselves and to be independent and to work through things. But not all of us have had that. Some of us have grown up in homes where we felt constantly suppressed and kind of beaten down, maybe verbally or mentally and even physically. And I think that can play a massive role in your life as an adult and how you just view yourself. And so working through pain in these races, when I reflect on everything that I went through, what I realize is my relationship with pain has been a journey. And I think that's really important for our listeners to understand, because sometimes people will write in and they'll be like, dude, I did a marathon and I got to the start line, but like halfway through I had these horrible blisters and it was just too much. Like I couldn't finish. And there's like kind of like this guilty or shame tone that comes with it. Like, I feel so weak. How in the world do you push through that pain? I'm really down on myself because I couldn't even push through in a marathon. And my heart is just like, so like, I feel that in my core, because what I know to be true is that our pain, we have a couple ways that we can interact with it. And one of the most powerful ways you can look at pain is that it increases your capacity for compassion. When you go through painful situations or you go through deep loss or grief, or even in sports when you're kind of suffering through injuries and you're pushing through pain to get to that finish line, we can look at that pain as just all consuming, all about us. but we can, and we can also be embittered by the pain. We can be so angry that it happened to us, be so angry that that's what we're feeling. And it's just not fair. And life isn't fair. And, why does all my races always have to end like this? But the other side of pain is your ability to look out into the world and have compassion on other people and be understanding. Pain also allows you to, when you push through it, to see how strong you are. When you don't let pain be the dictator in your life, but you let the goal and who you are be first. And I think that when people tell me that they've dropped out of a race because of just, a little blister or whatever, which, by the way, blisters are super excruciating. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many nerve endings in your feet. And I know that even just one can completely debilitate you. It can screw up your running gait. It can be all consuming. So, but I have so much compassion for people because I realize that like pain is a journey. And we all feel pain differently. And it's relative to all of us. In no way, shape, or form can I ever tell someone how they should be feeling, or that, oh, you're so weak, or that you need to toughen up. Because I know the things that I'm able to endure right now, I could not endure 10 years ago. And, I've had a lot of DNFs in my career. I remember the first time I threw up in a race, it was at High Bishop Sierra 100K. And this is back in 2010. And for whatever reason, I was still, this was like only my second or third ultra. And I was learning about this sport. There's so many things I didn't know. Mm-hmm. But this race was up near Mount Whitney. So it was at altitude. Yeah. And when I hit the aid station, someone was serving like cheesy potato soup full of dairy. I should not have eaten it, but it started making me vomit. I started throwing up, and that frightened me. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to end up in the hospital. This is what I really felt like. I was miserable at altitude, throwing up. And so I came into an aid station and I was like, I don't think I can finish this race. And they're like, well, if there's two ways out of the aid station. If you go left, that's for the 100K course. If you go right, that's the 50-mile course. That leads you right back to the finish line. And I was like, oh, I'm dropping down to the 50-miler. So I dropped down to the 50-mile distance because it was the quickest way to the finish. And I was miserable all the way back to the finish. And it was just, that race scared me. Now, today, when I throw up, I literally can run and throw up while I'm running. Like, I've had many paces that are like, holy smokes. Like, I don't even think twice about it. And for me, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, that's probably just like a reset. Like, yeah, I actually needed that. I probably shouldn't have eaten that before. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't rattle me at all. There's like no way I would ever think of dropping out for throwing up. Obviously, if I was puking up blood and blacking out, okay, that's something different. But like, if I'm puking up and I'm still like coherent and I'm fine and I'm like, yeah, like my body's unhappy right now, I know I can keep pushing forward. So I just want to encourage every listener that pain, just like when you sign up for a marathon and you have a training plan, you are going to get stronger by the time you reach the end of that training plan. If you commit yourself every day to the training, you're going to get better, stronger, and more knowledgeable about your body and the race that you're training for. And pain is the same way. We all have that starting point of what we can endure. And there's so much of it is about listening to your body. No one can feel what you feel. No one can tell you what you should be feeling. And feelings are very powerful. And sometimes feelings betray us. I've had that in races too, where I completely let my emotions overtake me and I overreact. And then I make a really like harsh decision based on my feelings, emotions. And then 20 minutes later, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have just calmed down and relaxed into that and was more thoughtful, because I wouldn't have made that decision. Yeah. So it's a journey. It's a learning process. Do not beat yourself up because you had to drop out of a race. Here's the thing. There's a big difference in DNF and quitting. And I really hope that this can kind of get pushed out into the sports world for people to understand. Quitting is I'm done forever. That's what quitting is. Quitting is, I will never, ever do that again. I will never believe in myself. I'm never going to try. Like, end of story. Till the day I die, I'm done. But you can have 10 DNFs before finishing that first marathon. You know what's so cool about that is that you kept trying over and over and over and over again. What does that say about you? You are a person who perseveres. You are a person who endures. This isn't about how many times you can get something right the first time. That's not what life is about. Life is about just never giving up. And sometimes it does take 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times to complete something. But that is part of your story. And all those setbacks, all those challenges, all those times you had a DNF or that you had to step off and into the sidelines, you're going to learn something and you're going to grow from that. And that was one of the most powerful things that I learned at Moab was like, it was really frustrating that once I shredded my feet at Cocodona, I knew there was nothing I could do for the rest of the races. They would be an issue at some point.
Yeah.
And it was so public.
Yeah.
You know, like, I can't tell you how many people wanted to give their advice and tell me what to do and like, what's your problem? And some people were kind of like frustrated with me. I even had friends that were like frustrated with me. And I was like, I know I'm frustrated too. And it's just kind of like, dude, you're a pro, figure it out. And, you know, but I think that's so true to life too, where it's like, sometimes there's things we can't change. Sometimes there's things in our life that are just like this thorn in our flesh that it's like, it will just be there. Mm-hmm. And so am I going to let that rule everything about me moving forward? Or am I just going to learn to have it be part of my journey? And that pain that I had in my feet, I knew if I was going to complete the Grand Slam, it was going to be a part of every race.
Yeah.
And that was a first for me. Mm-hmm. That I've never dealt with that in my entire career. And it was painful. It was humbling. It was frustrating. I mean, I was crying full blown tears at mile 81 with Sarah at the island aid station at Moab because I was weary. It's easy to get weary of the things that frustrate us, and it's easy to let things that hurt just overtake us. And, you know, Sarah was such a friend in that moment and just put her arm around me and just encouraged me to keep going, which obviously I did. But I think that I really want to just see people embrace the DNF, embrace those failures, and know that there's lessons and there's pure gold inside each of those, because they're not failures, and it's not calling you a failure. That moment is a moment that you weren't able to achieve, but that moment then turns into a stepping stone for you, a stepping stone that is supposed to propel you forward. And so, pain is a journey, and it's something that I've known very well for most of my life. And that's another reason why I broke up my memoir into 2 different books. You know, the first one, it really lays that foundation to help people understand, like, I don't do these races and I don't push through this stuff just because I'm tough. And that isn't something that's not even the message that I want to put out. I want people to be real. I want people to feel the life they're in and be unique in who they are. And you don't need to do these races to have a meaningful life at all. But these races help me tell a story that's so true to real life. And
describe the difference, or even, I guess, the relationship between the pain in a race when you're racing and the relationship of pain in real life, right? Like, so obviously you can't DNF in real life, right? You can't like drop out. So what's the relationship, or how are they different? Like, how do you approach pain in a race and pushing through, and pain in real life, be it physical, obviously more in the race, or even in real life, but maybe physical pain in racing, and then maybe some like emotional pain or struggle in real life.
I love that. You don't get the opportunity to DNF in life. It's so true. You know, one of the reasons why I feel like I can push through in a race is because I genuinely see races, recreational sports as opportunities. Mm-hmm. And within those opportunities, at any moment, I can step off the course and make everything go away.
Right.
So I see that as a gift. When I come to a start line, it is cool that I see the race as an opportunity to test myself. And I love that. I'm surrounded by people that are also testing myself. And I feel like even when it comes down to like competition, I love competition. I love that Ann and Elle were out there pushing me so hard. I love that they are such great athletes, so gritty, that I got the best out of myself because of them. Like I had a better race because they were there. And so that's how I look at races. So when, and we hear people talk about races as, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. This is where I'm going to find myself. And this is, where I'm going to grow. And I think we do have those opportunities definitely to grow in races. You reveal stuff about you that you don't get to see in everyday life, right? But I always like it to take it a step further in that if it's only in a race that you get to see who you are, then we're really limiting ourselves, and we're limiting a lot of people too, because these are like definite privileges that I get to do these races. Yeah. And so I feel like, how can I take this race and actually apply it to real everyday life? So yeah, I look at pain in life and pain in race totally differently. And I remind myself of real life when I'm out there. When Joe and I were running the last 30 miles, there was a point in the race, and he's such a compassionate person and he's such a caring person. Yeah. He had a hard time seeing how much I was hurting. And so I had to verbally tell him, like, I'm okay. Like, I just run in front of me and don't talk to me. I go, there's nothing, like, absolutely has nothing to do with you. Like, I felt bad for him that he had to endure that, because it went against everything that was in him to like not want to say something to help me out. But I was crying. I mean, it was a lot of physical pain, but what I did in that quiet time was I thought about every step that I was taking. And I reminded myself that I'm out here doing a sport that I love. And I have this whole crew of pacers and friends that are out here supporting me, giving up their whole week to get me to the finish line. Everyone is cheering me in, and I can't let myself slip into this moment of self-pity. There's no self-pity in a race. This is not pain and suffering. Yeah, I'm really uncomfortable, but at any time, if I get to that next aid station, I can just slip my shoes off and phone up Eddie, and he can come and pick me up from the aid station, and we'll go out for a nice dinner with the crew at a restaurant. Like, and sometimes you just have to have those real honest conversations with yourself. And then it was locking back in and telling myself, Sally, you've been here before. You've endured this before. It sucks, but it's going to subside as soon as you cross that finish line. Let's go. Now, when it's real life, which I detail that obviously like in my book, and I feel like you and I, Eddie, have been in situations that, especially in our young 20s and when we were first married, when we did a lot of traveling, like we traveled to places that were filled with pain that we couldn't change. I still remember when I found out I was pregnant with Mackenzie, you were in El Salvador. You were visiting orphanages there. You were walking through some of the dumps where families lived. I remember just like feeling the anguish that you had, like coming through the phone, because you were holding babies that had AIDS. And these babies essentially would be forgotten and almost unadoptable. And at this time in our life, like, you wanted nothing more than to be a dad. And you had taken a picture with this, I'll never forget her, this little 3-year-old, I think it was Anna. And she had these big brown eyes, and she was just in your arms, and you were so happy. And you said, I want to bring her home, Sally. Like in that moment. Yeah. It's like, oh man, you want to do everything you can to help and to take people out of a situation that's rough. Right. That was a eye-opening experience for sure. And then you also took a trip to Cambodia where you worked with kids who had been sex trafficked. Yeah. And then also an orphanage and kind of the same situation. And And at that time we had 2 babies.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. I remember you calling back home. And so I think you and I, like, when you put yourself out into the world, and I think it's really easy when we're in pain to turn inward. Mm-hmm. And turning inward and just focusing on how hard things are for us and how bad things feel. It's easy to get lost in there. It's easy to stay there. And it's really hard to turn outward and ask people for help or to see the brighter side or to see hope or the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. But I think because you and I spent a lot of years venturing into places that were dark and painful, and being surrounded by people that is their every single day. Every day they wake up, it is mentally, physically painful to live. And I know this topic is kind of like hitting heavy, but people ask this question all the time. So like, I'm being just completely honest here. This is why and where my relationship with pain comes from, because I understand and have felt true real life pain. Yeah. And there's pain all around us. I mean, you look at the wars that are going on right now and the dissension and the fights and just the hate. It's really hard just to even read about it. Yeah. That is real life. Yeah. Like, that is real life for people, and then it's like, I go and run this race. And it's like, yeah, my feet hurt, so when you allow yourself to think upon these things, when you allow yourself to turn away from your current state and see the big picture and really understand what it is that you're doing, it helps change your perspective. You get a much stronger perspective. And, that's a big part of what we talk about in this podcast is, when I say strong mind, strong body, strong love, like that is exactly what I'm talking about, is having a strong love for the people in the world around you. It starts in your mind and how you see the world and how you're choosing to approach it. What are you choosing to focus on? So I'm thinking of like people in a race that don't have maybe the background to call upon to maybe garner some strength, maybe like that you have, that someone is in a race, they're in a ton of pain. In fact, they're maybe in the middle of it and enduring so much discomfort and it's almost too much for them to bear. What do you say to that person? I know you kind of alluded to maybe an answer where you look outside yourself, look to someone that's gone through something or the world, what they're going through. And okay, I can go through what I'm going through because it's much worse there. That might be a strategy, but what do you say to those people? Yeah. Let me just flip this for a minute and I'll just put on a coaching cap. So like if I was on the sidelines and, of a 50K and someone's coming in at mile 28 and they're like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm done. Yeah. I am done. The first thing I always encourage people to do is just to slow down, even stop, like literally go sit on a rock, because your emotions and your feelings are actually very powerful. Your feelings and kind of the more fleeting things. So feelings and emotions, they are fleeting. Yeah. And they can overtake you. I mean, we have all, I think everyone listening can think back to a time when you let your emotions take over and you ended up making maybe not the best decision or a decision that you regret. But I don't think emotions and feelings should be ignored either. Like I love the emotions and feelings of falling in love. Yeah. I love the emotions and feelings of like Christmas morning with my kids, or there's emotions and feelings that flood me every time I smell pine trees. I think of my mom and it's like a flood of memories come in and all of these emotions, it can make me cry. Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful part of being a human being. I don't think that being strong is about hardening yourself. This isn't about being hard and being the toughest person out there and just sucking it up. It's when you choose strength, sometimes the strongest thing to do is to acknowledge your weakness and be okay with even venting like, dude, this hurts. Like I need help and I don't know which way to turn. Like sometimes that's how you get to the strongest solution. And I'll tag back on this again. Like when I was with Sarah and I was so upset, I was so angry about my feet. Part of that when I vented to her was like, I had kept in a lot of discomfort for like 25 miles. And I had, I told you, Eddie, in the previous aid station that I was fine. Right. I wasn't fine.
Right.
And that's really hard for me to do, is to keep that inside when I just want to be like honest and transparent with someone. Cause sometimes just speaking it into existence, you're able to look at it a little bit better and deal with it right there. Mm-hmm. You're not letting it control you, but you're just like, I'm going to acknowledge this. Dude, this hurts. I don't know what to do. And I want to find a solution because the goal matters to me. And so I would tell someone, if you're in the middle of that 50K and you're just like, I do not know how I'm going to get to the finish line. If you can get to an aid station and sit down, give yourself watch your clock. Mm-hmm. Make sure, pay attention to all of the cutoff times, everything. You might have to rearrange your big goal. Maybe your goal was to get on the podium and now that's going to be out of reach. That's okay. Now what's the new goal? Well, the goal now, I just want to finish. If you can focus on finishing, you can focus on getting to the finish line as best you can with what you have. That is so powerful. And I've talked about this a lot, no matter the circumstance, because no matter the circumstance is, I'm going to try no matter what comes my way. And sometimes those end up being the performances you're most proud of, because it isn't the standing at the top of the podium. It's like, wow, I just showed myself that I can work through this. I just showed myself what I can endure. I just showed myself that I can battle in my mind and overcome what I didn't think I was able to overcome before. So the power of slowing down and pausing, sometimes you just need to sit in an aid station, cool the body down, get something to eat, get something to drink. Maybe a medic can help with whatever it is. It's an IT band, your quads are blown, you rolled an ankle, but you can still move forward on it. Maybe you're throwing up, all these things that are like, okay, these are minor. Again, I never am pushing people out to be like, you broke your femur and you have rhabdo. Yeah. Please do not do that. That's just foolish. Permanent injury, stuff that's going to take you out for a year or end you up in the hospital or dead. Do not do that. Again, DNFs is not a negative thing. We can learn from DNFs and we can learn from setbacks. So what I'm specifically talking about right now is how you can find a solution when you have told yourself there's no way I can get through this. So a moment of pause, of reflection, of gathering yourself. And I want you to ask yourself in that moment, how much of this is feeling and emotions? And can I contain those things? Because the mark of someone that's strong, especially emotional strength, this is a really powerful tool to have, is being calm under pressure. Yeah. I mean, when you think of a commander in chief, you think of a leader, you think of a coach, you think of, a teacher, you look to them in your stressful moments. You look to them to be strong and to be stable, not freaking out. So if you feel like I'm freaking out, I'm losing it, I'm crying and I'm cussing and I'm just I'm babbling and the world is falling apart and I think this is the worst thing ever. Okay. Get to a place where you can control your emotions. You can breathe, you can relax, eat something, drink something, get a med to take a look at you. Do not quit yet. Really think about what you're doing. Is what you're dealing with going to cause you to have to walk to the finish line? And will you still have enough time to get to that finish line? If so, go for it. Are you right there at the cutoff time? Or maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't. Go for it. Are you now at the aid station and you have timed out? Okay, that's okay. That is okay. You will try again. You are going to get back on another starting line because that's who you are. So I'd say that's the coaching cap. That's Coach Sally coming out. Yeah. I don't give in to and I've coached so many different personalities and I can tell usually within the first or second interview with an athlete, what kind of personality they have and how they're going to be best motivated. I may have told this a long time ago on a podcast. I think this is really helpful. This relates to your question, Ed. I coached this woman. It was over a decade ago. Her name was Holly, and we did private coaching. I would meet with her 1 or 2 times a week. She had spent 20 years trying to complete a road marathon. Now, this woman was wildly successful in her everyday life. I mean, her career, she was like a CEO of a big company, very wealthy, very involved in different clubs and activities in the city, very well known and loved, like just great woman.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, in her trying to complete this marathon, she had tried several times. So not being able to complete it, she hired me. And I was very curious why someone so successful, great personality, was not able to complete this marathon. So one day I decided that I would run with her. We were on the track and we were doing like this workout. And I thought, I'm just going to run with her for like the first 20 minutes. And I want to listen to her tell me about her marathons. I knew I would discover something about her. She started to tell me about the different marathons that she had done, and that it was always between mile 18 and 20 that she'd drop out. And that right away, like a light bulb went on for me, because I was like, okay, that she has a wall. There's a wall, and it's always every single time she drops out between miles 18 and 20. So that was like the first thing. Later on, as the weeks went on, I thought there's got to be something else though. Like, what is that? Like, where is that wall coming from? She started to open up about her life. There was some stories from her childhood and the relationship she had with her parents that were really sad. Some of it had to do with rejection. And I think that even some family members had rejected like her daughter. And I was like, wow, like that's really painful. Here's a woman so successful and had some pain in her personal life too. So I thought, all right. The other thing was Holly had a lot of coaches. So she had like a Pilates coach, she had a swim coach, a bike coach, because she was a triathlete. Okay. She also would go to this same sports PT. And she had this sports PT for a while. And I just felt like she has all these people talking into her life, all these people telling her how to train and what to do. We had a successful training buildup. Like the whole buildup was amazing. She was such an incredible person. Like I loved coaching her. I learned a lot from her. I thought she was just this brilliant woman and very, very interesting, led a very interesting life. Well, we get to 3 weeks out from the marathon, and she says to me, gosh, I'm starting to feel like a little bit of pain in my shin. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I go, how long have you been feeling that? She's like, oh, just like past couple of days. I'm like, okay. So I started looking at like all of her activity, everything that she was doing. And I was like, like you might just need to replace some shoes. Like, I don't think we've done anything to like really stress you out. She's like, I'm going to go see my PT. So she goes and sees her PT, and now we're like 10 days out from the race. And she was doing the Big Sur marathon. She comes back to me 10 days before the race, and she's like, you know what? I'm dropping down to the half. I'm going to do a half marathon instead. My PT, I've been with him for a while, and he tells me I just don't have the body type to finish a full marathon. And that's why my shins hurt. And, and this has kind of been what's been going on for many years. And he just tells me like, that's why I can't finish. And I was furious, like in a good way, kind of just like, excuse me? No, like this has not like, who is like, I wanted to call her PT right away and be like, who do you think you are? Yeah. Like to tell someone they don't have the right body type to run a marathon. And she was, a taller woman. She's like 5'10", and she didn't have like this petite little, endurance frame, but it was really, I was really upset that was going to be the roadblock for her. And I knew there was other things playing into that. So she had tried for 20 years to finish a marathon, to the point now where it was so unachievable in her mind that before we even got to the start line, she was already finding ways and excuses to not make it to the finish. And so I told her, I said, Holly, I don't care if you crawl. You are crossing that finish line because you need to. You need to cross that finish line. So let's just plan to run every other mile, or maybe you run the first half marathon and you walk the second half, you will have enough time to finish. I believe in you. I know you can do this. I've seen your training. I see how you run. You can do this, Holly. She leaves for the marathon, and I have no idea what her decision was going to be. Mm-hmm. And it's now the morning of the race. I don't hear from her. I'm getting a little nervous. I'm back home. And several hours later, I get a text from her telling me that she had completed her first marathon.
Nice.
And she asked, can we meet for dinner tomorrow night? So I met up with her for dinner. She arrived at the restaurant before me. And as soon as I opened up the door to the restaurant, she was standing there. As soon as we look at each other, we both start crying. Mm. And I literally run to her and just hug her and tell her how proud I am of her. Mm-hmm. And just reiterate over and over again, like, that was always in you. I knew you could do it. I knew you could do it. You did it. You are a marathon finisher. Mm. And that will always be one of my proudest coaching moments, because that had nothing to do with her physical training or what she was capable of doing. It was overcoming the belief that she had in herself and how she viewed herself, and letting other people dictate what she was capable of doing. Yeah. And I feel this so often with athletes, that they can be surrounded by people that are like, it's okay. Yeah. Like, this is too much for you. Yeah, I wouldn't push through that. That's just stupid. And some people ask me, like, hey, when do you know to show yourself grace? How do you know what that point is for you? Like, isn't there a time where it is too much and you need to stop, or you are pushing too hard? And let me tell you something. We do not have a problem in our world today with people pushing too hard. Mm. We have a problem with people quitting too early. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. That there isn't just this waves and waves of people. Oh my gosh, everyone is just pushing so hard. And I'm sorry, like, it would be one thing if people were dropping dead left and right while trying to attempt a goal. Mm-hmm. That's not happening. Mm-hmm. And yes, I do believe in grace and self-care and looking out for yourself and doing what's best and listening to your mind and body. I genuinely believe in that. But I also feel like there's a fine line. And that fine line is a space that only you can define, because I can't feel what you're feeling. I don't know what your threshold is. I don't know what you're capable of. I don't know what you're able to push through, but you do. But unfortunately, a lot of us have already set up that barrier before we even begin. Before we even begin, we say, well, this is it. This is my limit, because that's what I've practiced my entire life. But what happens when you get to that point where you say, this is just way too much, and you take one more step? What happens? I promise you're not going to drop dead. Yeah. But a lot of times what happens is then you take another step and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, it hurts, but I took 2 more steps. Like, I was going to quit 2 steps ago, but like, I'm still moving. I'm going a lot slower, and I don't like this, but I just got 2 steps closer to the finish line. Someone wrote in the other day, it was a woman. I was so happy she shared this with me, but she completed her first 100-mile race. And she said, Sally, I had some really terrible blisters, and it was something that I didn't think that I could push through. And I was chasing cutoffs. I was right there. She's like, but I pushed through. And when I crossed that finish line, she said, I've never been so proud of myself. It definitely wasn't the day that she wanted. It wasn't the day that she had trained for and hoped for. But she finished. Yeah. And she pushed through a barrier that allowed her to see, like, wait a minute, I'm a little bit stronger than I thought I was. And I'll tell you what, at this time now, it's been like a week or 2, her feet are healed and she's okay. And I think that those are the decisions that you, as the listener, you get to make those decisions. No one else. And you don't need to measure yourself next to anyone else. You don't need to compare yourself to me. We're all at different points in our journey. We're all growing at different rates. We're all encountering different seasons on this path at different times. And I think that's what's so powerful, as I said before, why pain and discomfort is your opportunity to increase your capacity for compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so easy when you've been through everything to come upon somebody else in their journey and be like, dude, what a wimp, like toughen up. Like you don't know where they are in their journey. You don't know that the storm they have ahead is going to be 10 times worse than what you just went through.
Mm-hmm.
And for people that, I even talk to people like, dude, I haven't really been through anything in my life. I'm like, is your life over? Right. You have no idea what awaits you.
Right.
And so it is not our place to judge where people are in their journey. It's not our place to judge how people interact and perceive pain. I think that there's a respect there and that we can all, if anything, just be compassionate for one another and encourage each other that you are stronger than you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it sometimes starts with just taking one more step in testing that out. And like I said before, sometimes it takes 10 times before you finish that 50K race. But maybe each race you were getting a little bit further. Maybe the first race you dropped out at 10 miles and the next one you dropped out at 20 and the next one you dropped out at 22. Like, do you realize you're progressing even within those dropouts? Like you're getting better each time and you're showing up every time. You are one who perseveres. And that's the stronger way to look at it. That's the stronger way to approach it and to just move through it.
Yeah. Speak to the person that is on the other side of that. Maybe that isn't going through the pain, but is watching someone go through the pain. And instead of telling, so I guess for me, like you come in some of these aid stations at certain races and I know you're in pain. It's late in the race. Things are bothering you. Feet are bothering you. You can't keep food down. You want to sleep, but you also have a goal of finishing the race and doing well. Right. So for me, I can go to the medic and be like, she's done. She's tapping out, like calling it quits, and you're going to be good in a couple hours. Right. But speak to maybe the person that is maybe in my shoes that is witnessing the pain, has the ability to get that person to stop or quit or, you know what I mean, to get out of the pain. But I think what you were saying, having the compassion, having the care and the ability to help that person in the pain see that they just need to go one more step, or, giving them that confidence and maybe speak to like just having, or the importance of that person just sitting with someone in pain, right? And how powerful that is.
I mean, I kind of feel like this would be a good place for you to discuss, because one of the greatest traits about you is, and I think most people who meet you in person really get to know you. I'd say all of your best friends would say this too, is you are who you are 100% of the time, every day, 365 days of the year.
Yeah,
like you have this peace and this calmness about you that is so refreshing. And that's not to say that like you're not holding a lot inside. I know you also hold your emotions inside. Like you and I interact with our emotions very differently. I mean, we've gotten in big fights about this before, especially when we were first dating.
Yeah.
It was like, I wanted to see all the emotions and feelings, and that's just not how you communicate.
Right.
And that's how I am. Mm-hmm. I can be very fiery. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I can be emotional and passionate and just, you see it. I can't hide any of that.
Yeah.
But what is so powerful about your presence when I come into these aid stations is I know without a doubt, regardless of what I'm going through, that you are going to be very steadfast and calm. You have this harness over your own emotions that you aren't going to inject into me. And I think that's really powerful. If you're thinking of like from a crew chief standpoint, that is somebody that you want. And it isn't always going to be your partner. It could be like your best friend or your coach, or like just somebody that is calm and collected and in charge of themselves. You can kind of relate this back to kids. Like when babies are young, toddlers, preschoolers, I think of like Mackenzie and Isaiah. Mackenzie's a great example because she's a lot like you, like with her emotions. Isaiah and I are like twins, like in every single way. Love my boy. But Mackenzie and Eddie are very similar in you have to gain you and Mackenzie's trust, like to the like highest level in order to see and hear your emotions and feelings. Like you just don't give that away to anybody.
Right.
And so But what was so interesting, like when Mackenzie was little, it would be like when we'd drop her off, like at preschool or whatever, like she would be fine. But then as soon as she saw us, she'd start crying.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, and the teachers are always like, oh yeah, of course, when they see you, they're going to ham it up. And I was like, well, there is that side where like a kid can fall and scrape their knee and they're still fine running on the playground. But then as soon as they see you, they're like, ah, they lose it. They start crying. I fell and scraped my knee. And the teacher could be like, that was like 30 minutes ago and they weren't crying at all. But I think what is really important to note here is they're showing that emotion because you are safe.
Yeah.
Like you are actually the person that they can trust to vent those emotions. They know that you care about what's inside of them. And some people are genuinely embarrassed to display. Feelings can be overpowering. It can almost feel scary and even embarrassing if you show them. So there is two part. Yeah, sometimes kids can kind of get their way by showing the emotions, but I always saw that with Mackenzie is, no, she was probably like really hurt and she's not going to let anyone see it. And she even does that to this day. I mean, there's some races that she's had even just in the past couple of years where she's won and everyone's celebrating her. And then she comes and sees me and she just breaks down crying and she tells me in my ear, Mom, I missed my goal.
Yeah.
Like I won, but like I was trying so hard for this time and I didn't get it. And I like feel her at her core and I'm her safe person. Like I'm the person that she knows is going to understand and is going to treat those feelings with compassion and love and not put her down for it. I mean, she's had times where that's happened in the past. And then she was berated by teammates or a coach saying, I can't believe that you're upset. You just won. Oh man, my mama bear just comes out in me where I'm like, you don't know how precious that goal was to her. Yeah. Like this isn't about winning for her. Like she sets a goal. She works at it with all her heart and it hurts when she misses it. Like that's nice that for you, the big thing is winning, but like she understands how precious a goal is. And so I think that when you get to know your crew or just the people close to you, it's important that you can kind of identify the power of emotions and feelings and know who you can trust with those things. So like 2 times in the race at Moab, I was so overcome with what I was feeling. And we had a big crew and we had all these pacers. And it was like, I wanted them all there because I wanted to share this experience with them. That was so important to me. But I was also well aware of the other crews in the aid station that were looking for feedback any way that they could so they could give it to their runner. Sure. And I was like, I made the excuse both times, hey, I need to go change in the car. And as soon as we closed those doors, I just let out everything. Right. And it was like the 2 times in the race where I could do that. And I'm telling you what I'm feeling and my frustrations and the truth about my feet and like that I can't eat. And I'm just like, I mean, I think it was mile 200. Like I couldn't even breathe. And I was starting to go into become really worried because I was like, I'm going to get caught. Like I'm now climbing back up into 10,000 feet and I can't breathe fully out. I can't breathe fully in. And the only way I'm going to breathe well is by slowing down significantly. And it was just stressing me out. And I can't talk about that openly in an aid station. Are you kidding me? Yeah. So I feel like having you there, as soon as I would see your face in an aid station, there was just this peace that I got. It was like this overwhelming sense of like, I know I'm going to be okay. And so I think, you know, what would be great for you to talk about right now is just maybe things that you do that could encourage some of the listeners when they're with a runner that is struggling and like tools that you do with me that kind of helps keep them moved. Because I know like, there's never anything you can do to solve what I'm going through. Yeah. But you do change my mindset every time. Yeah. Yeah. I feel that with you, I always, think of the goal that you have, right? Like the goal is to win the race or the goal is to, get in at this time or whatever it is. And so I think when you come in, not feeling your best or in a lot of pain and knowing that it's a pain where it's not going to, hurt you if you continue, to remind you of the goal and to remind you of how far you've come to
get close to that goal, to know that it's close. It's doable. It's manageable still. Reminding you of all the sacrifice and all the time that you've put in to get to this part of the race, of the months of training and, the sacrifices of missing out on certain things or going to bed early, all those things that you've done already to get you to the point in the race to meet your goal, is always helpful too, because that's a lot of stuff that you can't get back if you are feeling like you want to quit or whatever. And then I think not making the things that you're going through a big deal, right? Like, I know that they're painful, for instance, your feet, right? Like, I knew that they were extremely painful, that they are causing all sorts of pain in other areas because you're trying to modify your run or whatever because it hurts. Like, to not make it such a big deal in the moment and say, you know what, let's just try to get one more mile in. Let's just see how it feels after that. Or let's just try to get this food in you. Let's maybe sleep at the next aid station. And if you're still feeling, in a lot of pain or whatever. So I think for me, I'm always like trying to get you to not think it's that big of a deal, and for you just to get to that next aid station. Yeah, those are the things that I usually say, and they usually work with you, right? Like, it's not like
yeah, they do.
Pulling teeth to get you to trust in that. I feel like most of the time you're like, okay, I just need to get moving again.
And I know too, and this is good for me. So everyone is motivated by different things, and I trust Eddie so much.
Yeah.
I mean, we have such a deep history, but I know that you'll never coddle me.
Yeah.
So I just know that. I just know that I'm not going to get that from you. You're not going to be like, oh baby, like, it's okay. Like, why don't you just stay in here for 30 minutes? Like, you will never, ever do that to me. So that is actually really helpful when I go into a race. I know I could come in crying and telling you like, this is really bad. And I know that you'll have compassion on me, but you're not going to let me quit. And I appreciate that because no one sees the work up close the way that you do. And the sacrifice and the dedication. And so,
that might be unique to me, I guess, huh? Because I see all of that. It affects me to a degree, right? When you're sacrificing or whatever, and you're gone or whatever it is, right? Like, so I see that, I sense that, I feel that. So maybe that's more of a unique thing for me, but
I've been in aid stations and I've watched crews get out of control with a runner. I feel bad for the runner.
Yeah.
You almost like want to rescue them. You see pacers get overambitious. I had said this at Moab, there was someone that was being paced like really hard. And I was like, I kind of like went into like this coaching mode. Like, I was like protective over this runner. Like, I wanted to like say something to the pacer, like, dude, back off. Like, we're so early into the race. Like, that's going to destroy that runner, what you're doing. And it's maybe because I've been in the sport for so long and I understand like the repercussions and what happens when a athlete puts so much trust into a pacer and a crew to help them get to the finish line. But then you can also see how if the pacer crew make it about themselves, it can really work against the runner.
That's dangerous.
And I've been on crews where crew members are fighting with each other. They're super upset about who's pacing which section. Even crews get like furious when a runner drops out. And I'm like, dude, this isn't your race.
Right.
Like, this isn't about you. If the runner DNFs or they get passed, like, it genuinely isn't about you. Like, you are 100% support. And what it means to be support is you support them in their highs, their lows, whether they DNF or they cross that finish line. And it's hard. I always say that to everyone. I go, Eddie has the hardest job. He has to be so patient and alert and ready and enduring the entire race. All I'm doing is running. And
I don't know. All you're doing is running.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I have like one job, like you're like navigating and like losing sleep and like trying to like come up with solutions to like a million different things. Like they are two very distinct things, and it can be very exhausting. I mean, I remember the first time I crewed and paced Badwater, and then I ran it 4 years later, and I was like, dude, running it is so much better. Like crewing it is hell. Yeah. Like it is so hard and exhausting to crew and pace Badwater. Like it is, people are like, oh, it's gonna be so fun. I'm like, it's not fun. Yeah. Like
it's fun for the first few hours.
For the first 7 hours when it's like dark out and everyone's excited.
27 hours, 28, you're like, okay.
Gosh, no, you hit 12, even just 12 hours.
Let's get this over with. Yeah.
We were really going that slow in 140 degree heat. Really? This is what we're doing. And we're all living off of like hot beef jerky and like.
And you, especially when we're crewing you, it's like we couldn't go like 3 miles ahead, turn off the lights and sleep for 20 minutes because, hey, you wanted to make sure you saw us.
I want to make sure I saw you. I mean,
don't go too far.
When it's like hellish temperatures, you want to make sure that you're not going to die. So
no, even at night, you're like, stay close. We're like, oh man.
Yeah, it's rough crewing and pacing, but I remember this one time, my good buddy, Chris was running the San Diego 100 and he had asked me to come up and pace him for like the end of it. So I was only able to come like the last 50 miles of his race. Like I wasn't there when he started or anything, but I knew to meet him at the halfway point aid station and I was going to crew and pace him all the way to the finish line. When he arrived at the spot, he arrived at the aid station, which was 8 miles before I was going to start pacing him. So he comes in and he's like ghost white, projectile vomiting. And so I'm crewing with this aid station and he looks at me. I mean, he looked terrible. And he's like, Sally, I haven't been able to keep anything down the last like hour. I feel so sick, Sally. Every volunteer in that aid station was on high alert, like immediately. And they're kind of gathering around him and like, what do you need? Like, I don't know if he should continue. And I'm like, what? Like, he's just vomiting. Yeah. Like, what do you mean he should continue? He's like halfway in. And like, I started getting like dirty looks from some of the volunteers. Like, oh my gosh, like, how could she be? This is like over a decade ago. This is a really long time ago. But like, they're just like, who would say that? In that moment, Chris left to go to the bathroom. And I was like, oh, that's a really good sign. Like, so he came out. I go, did you go pee? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's good. He's still processing stuff. Yeah. Like, that's a super good sign. And I was like, okay. And he lays down on this, like, where we were, it was like a camping trailhead. And so there was like this picnic table. He lays down on the picnic table and he literally thought he was going to get this coddling from me. And he's just like, dude, this has been such a rough day, Sally. Like, this is just not my day. And then this guy that was probably not a day over 70 comes running in looking so good. And I look at him and Chris was probably like in his 30s. Yeah. And I loved this. And I was like, oh, I'm so going to pit him, like make him go out with this guy. I go, Chris, cause I wasn't allowed to pace from here. I go, Chris, you've been throwing up. That's a reset. I go, you're fine. I go, see that guy right here that just came in looking fresh as a daisy? I go, he's about to leave and you're going to go leave with him. And he's like, what? And like the volunteers are shaking their head. They're like, I don't know. Like he doesn't even look good. And I was like, he's fine. So we're like having kind of like this back and forth. It's like this struggle of, the volunteers thinking that I'm being super mean and rigid. But like Chris and I were training partners for like a long time. Like he is a strong runner. Like I knew him and I knew what his goals were and I knew that this race meant a lot to him. And I was like, you're just having a low point. Yeah. And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, how about this? For the next 8 miles, I want you just to sip on water. That's it. You can grab like a cracker or something like that. But I have a feeling that maybe you're taking in way too many calories or your body's just upset about something that you ate. So you're going to spend these next 8 miles before I see you again, and you're going to do a full reset. So you're just going to take little sips of water the whole time. And I want you to go make a friend with that guy. He leaves like a beat up puppy dog. He's looking at me with big eyes. Like, I can't believe that, you're pushing me back out there and that you're not going to encourage me to quit. Cause that's what he wanted to do. Everyone in the aid station is like literally shaking their heads at me. It's like 1 a.m. too. Like, it's late. And I then drive away to the next aid station. And a couple hours later, I fell asleep in the car. A couple hours later, I get this knock on my window and it's Chris with the biggest smile and so much energy. He's like, let's go. Yes.
Nice.
Like he was just so excited. And I jump out of the car and he gives me a big hug. He's like, I am so grateful that you made me do that. He's like, I had the best conversation with that guy. We talked the entire time.
That's awesome.
He's like, I'm feeling so much better. I was able to eat a little bit like right before I came in just now. Like, let's finish this thing. And we did. We paced him all the way to the finish line. And yeah, he didn't get the finishing time he wanted at all. Was definitely not the time he was capable of. But his family and his kids were there waiting for him at the finish line. And that smile on his face just cannot be replaced. But it's one of my favorite stories because I feel like this happens a lot with runners. You know, it's easy when you don't, you know, in that case, we had some really emotional volunteers in the aid station. To me, I felt like they were really overreacting. And then to kind of gang up and be like, oh, this is like so foolish. But, you know, sometimes you just have to assess the situation by situation. If you have someone coming in and they're stumbling and they're vomiting blood and they can't even see straight and they're dizzy, yeah, let's assess that. But if you have someone that's still processing fluid, you know, they're going to the bathroom and they're still able to hold a conversation with you. Like, yeah, they probably just ate something bad and they just need a little reset. Let them sit in the aid station for 10 minutes and then encourage them to keep moving. I didn't tell Chris, hey, you need to hammer out the next section in an hour. I was like, I don't care if you walk every single step, sip some water, go make a friend. And it changed the whole course of his race. So again, that's just kind of going back to no one can feel what you're feeling, but the power of having level-minded crew members like you, Eddie. I mean, you're so level-minded. And I guess I kind of crew the same way you do. Like I will never, ever coddle you. And I've crewed and paced a lot in my days. And I can say that both Dave and Billy could probably attest to this. I can be pretty rigid as a pacer, you know, and push pretty hard. And, you know, I paced both of them to the finish at Andrews Crest 100. There was a side of me that was like, oh man, I'm pushing these guys really hard. But they went on to like finish incredible races. You know, they finished so strong there. And that's a really, really hard race. But I think leaning into not letting your emotions or letting the race become your race when you're a crew or a pacer is what the runner needs. It should always be, what is their goal? Keep that as the most important thing, even when they're in a low spot, even when they're struggling. Yeah, that's super powerful.
Yeah. All right. Let's end on maybe what are some words or phrases that you tell yourself to help you keep going when you're in a serious discomfort or some pain in a race? What are some things that you say to yourself, or maybe what you said to yourself at Moab, maybe around that aid station when you grabbed Sarah and you knew that pain was ahead of you and you were going to have to go face it? What are some things that you said to yourself to keep going, or maybe what are some things that people can refer to or say to themselves to keep going?
Well, my number one is choose strong, because I think that being strong isn't about having like a gift or a talent. You know, I think about how someone who's born with like a beautiful singing voice, like their voice is so beautiful, like they sing and like you just cry. Like it's just like a gift that they have. Like I love that. I love that everyone has their own unique gifts and talents, but I don't think that being strong is a gift. And I always try to convey that to people. I go, there's nothing like super special or unique about me that I have this like special strength. Right. It's just that I choose it. Yeah. And I think that is something that we can say to ourselves in every situation. I'm going to choose strength right now. I'm going to choose to be strong. I'm going to choose to think in the strongest mindset that I can. You know, sometimes there isn't always like the best option or the easiest option or the smoothest option, but there is a strong option. And what does that look like? And so I always encourage people, you know, maybe you didn't grow up with someone to point that out to you, that you have strength in you and that you do have the ability to overcome. You are equipped to live your life in every season that you encounter. And I think sometimes people feel like, I can't take this life. I can't take this pain. I can't take this discomfort. And it's like, but you actually can, because that's what's been laid out before you. So when you are in the middle of a race and you are feeling like this is too much for me to bear, I want you to reframe that and just ask yourself, what's the strongest way for me to keep going? And sometimes the strongest way is that you slow down and maybe you start walking. Maybe you take 10 minutes in an aid station. maybe you talk lovingly to yourself and remind yourself that you are valuable and that you're worth it. You're worth the discomfort to reach that goal because that's what you trained for. Those are the kind of things that I say to myself. Mm-hmm. I'll talk in the first person. I'll just straight up say, Sally, you can do this.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's as simple as that. John, you can do this. Juanita, you can do this. Hillary, you can do this. William, you can do this. It doesn't need to be anything flashy. I mean, I think there's a lot of phrases out there today, but we're all saying the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. You think go one more and stay hard and keep hammering and choose strong, keep your head up, keep your chin up, keep your eyes up, keep your heart up. I mean, it's like there's, we're all basically saying the same thing. And the same thing is that you just keep going. It's just showing up and just keep going. That's really what we're all saying, that you don't quit. The other thing is this a feeling or is this truth? That's a hard one.
That's good. Yeah.
Are you making the decision based on a feeling or are you making it based on a truth? Because the truth is, I want this goal. The feeling is, I feel terrible.
Yeah.
What's greater? The goal. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you can tell the feeling to shut up and just go after that goal then. And again, I can't reiterate enough that you yourself will need to make the decision of when is too much. Mm-hmm. I can't dictate that for you. And I don't even think that there's a chart because we're all on a different journey of learning how to interact and engage with pain in a different way. And like I said, like what I can endure today, I could not endure 10 years ago, but it was little by little learning and denying the walls and barriers that I had previously created in my mind that I was capable of. I thought I just had this limit. That's all I can take. And then one day I just chose, you know what? Maybe I can take more.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I can. And then it just opened up a floodgate of possibility for me.
It's the journey.
It's a journey.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a journey. So to our listeners, I think we're wrapping this up right now. Yep. I think this is a topic we will continue to discuss. It's really deep. There's so many different arms to it because, yes, I talk about pain in life, pain in racing and training and things that we can control and that we can't control. And it is one of my favorite topics. And one of the reasons is because nobody can escape it. It is a normal part of every human being's life.
Yep.
At some point, you will hit pain in training, in a race, in life, whether that's through loss or hardship. But, this is something that we can all identify with, and it's something that we can all work on. But a lot of what we're discussing are things that we need to be reminded of every single day. So I just want to lovingly encourage you, my listener, that you are strong and that you are so valuable. You're so wonderful, and you do have the ability to overcome whatever hardship is in your life or whatever is that you're dealing in training or in a race. I hope that you have people that continually remind you to believe in yourself, that continually remind you of the worth that you are. You are so valuable because you exist. There are so many wonderful things that make you uniquely you. And so don't be afraid to shine that. Don't be afraid to live authentically in that way. Go at your own pace and write your own story because no one else can do that for you. And I just want to say again, I know I'm echoing Eddie here. We are so glad that you are here. We are so grateful that you push play today, that you're part of the Choose Strong community. And we want you to know that we are rooting for you every single day. Ed, you want to say that last line that we always say?
I don't do it as good as you. Why don't you say it?
So keep choosing strong in all that you do.